Hey guys, it's Dan Martin and it's on education. And today we're going to be talking about the controversial topic of critical race theory. We'll be going over the five main tenets of critical race theory, and we'll look a little bit at the origins of the theory. We'll also be looking at evidence to suggest that it's taught in the schools or not taught in the schools. And we'll also look at some census data to look at possible alternative reasons why there is a wealth gap between the Caucasian community and the African American community. And so I'm looking forward to diving deep into the subject. Hope you are too. So let's start right away. So why a look at critical race theory? I think the reason that I became so interested in it is that depending on who you talk to about the theory, it's presented in different ways. The proponents of it say it's just a more honest look at our country and our history, while others see it as a radical idea that's being pushed to our kids, making them feel making them feel that they are racist because of the color of their skin. And so I wanted to take a look at it, see if it's being taught in the schools, try to figure out exactly what the theory is, and present it in a way that looks at it from a educated point of view. And so without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, so when I was doing the research on this, I looked at several different definitions of critical race theory, and I was really looking for proponents of the theories and looking for their definitions. And I went through several, and this is the one that I chose because it was the most readable and understandable as far as I was concerned anyway. So this comes from the British Education Research Association online resource. I have it listed here if you're watching this on YouTube and not listening to it. If you are listening to it on Podbean or some other podcast medium, you're more than welcome to go to YouTube and check out the resources that I have listed. It says here, CRT is a body of scholarship steeped in racial activism that seeks to explore and challenge the prevalence of racial inequality in society. It is based on the understanding that race and racism are the product of social thought and power relations. CRT theories endeavor to expose the way in which racial inequality is maintained through the operation of structures and assumptions that appear normal and unremarkable. And so, when I read this, it seems like the underpinning is an underlying racism that is accepted as being normal. So let's go ahead and look at the five tenets of this theory and explore deeper its meaning. Okay, so let's talk about the first tenet of CRT. It says centrality of racism. CRT begins with a number of basic insights. One is that racism is normal, not aberrant in American society. Because racism is an ingrained feature of our landscape, it looks ordinary and natural to persons in the culture. Okay, so when I read this, I had to look up the word aberrant, and aberrant means departing from an acceptable standard. And so what I like to do is I'd like to turn that around and say that they feel like racism is an accepted part of our culture that is not seen as being abnormal at all or something that we don't want. It says here that CRT regards racism as so deeply entrenched in the social order that it is often taken for granted and viewed as natural. CRT scholars emphasize that racism does not necessarily operate in crude, explicit forms, but operates in a socio-political context where it is becoming more embedded and increased nuance. Racism can be evidenced in the outcome of processes and relations irrespective of intent. And so I think they feel like that racism is prevalent, that sometimes it's not, you don't intend to be racist, but you are racist because of the structures of society and how we go about doing our business. And I want to tell you, I started this thing several times and started researching it several times, and I found this to be so insulting and so against the way that I believe that it made it hard for me to go on. And as I read through these things, I think that they think that people don't want to address it because it makes them feel uncomfortable. And so let's keep on and see what else they say. Okay, and so this is not part of the tenets, but I wanted to look at their definition of racism. And I found this in a separate article entitled Racism as an Ideology. And it's from the Salem Press Encyclopedia 2022. And so the significance here, they say, is racism can be described as an ideology, a belief that helps to maintain the status quo. More specifically, racism refers to the belief that one's race is superior to other races in significant ways, and the superior race is entitled by virtue of its superiority to dominate other races and to enjoy a larger share of society's wealth and status. So this is a little tricky. There are bits of truth in here, and then there are things that I would not agree to. The first thing is racism refers to the belief that one race is superior to other races. I do believe that that is what racism is all about, is this view that you're superior because of the color of your skin. I do not believe that it helps to maintain the status quo. I don't believe that that's the status quo of our society. I don't think that most people believe that their skin color entitles them to a bigger portion of the American dream. I don't believe that that is true at all. I believe that we are a merit-based society, that the American dream is that you can succeed because of the quality of your ideas, the hard work that you put into your ideas, the willingness to sacrifice, and so forth. So I think that this is kind of a disturbing definition of racism, because it has merits, it has certain parts that are true, and then has other ideas that I don't feel are correct. Okay, so the second tenet of CRT is white supremacy. Understanding the role of power of white supremacy in creating and reinforcing racial subordination and maintaining a normalized white privilege is central to the CRT imperative to reveal and oppose racial inequality. And so again, they say that it's not necessarily a crude white supremacist group like the Klan or I don't know, any other number of radical groups, skinheads, etc. They say they refer instead to a political, economic, and cultural system in which whites overwhelmingly control power and material resources. Conscious and unconscious ideas of white superiority and entitlement are widespread, and relations of white dominance and non-white subordination are daily reenacted across a broad array of institutions and social settings. And so this is the idea that white culture dominates and is thought to be superior by white people, and they have this entitlement that they believe that they are entitled to a bigger part of the American dream than anybody else. And I just don't believe that that is true. I just went and kind of wanted to look at some statistics in terms of population, and so in the population was compared in 20 and 21, and let's look at those. I think I have those on the next slide. Okay, so if we look at the percentage of white folks as compared to other minorities, in 1920, the percentage of white Americans, I'm sorry, not 1920, 2020, the percentage of white Americans was 63.8%, and in 2021, it went down to 59.3%. Hispanic and Latinos for 2020 were 16.4%, and it went up to 18.9% in 2021. Black non-Hispanics grew slightly between the 2 years. 2020 it was 12.3% and 12.6%. And so I guess the thing that I want to highlight is there's substantially more white Anglo folks in our country as opposed to blacks, Hispanics, and so forth. And when you watch TV or you look at cultural events or you look at corporations, I think that they value minority groups and are seeking to recruit minority groups as part of their plan to grow their businesses. And certainly when you watch TV commercials, you see a lot of folks of color, you see a lot of Hispanic folks, you see same-sex couples, mixed race couples, and so forth, probably to a higher extent than the actual percent of those people in our population. I also wanted to point out that between the years of 1961 and 2019, I think it was the year that I looked at, there were tons of civil rights legislation, tons of equal opportunity legislation to try to make sure that we have a fair playing field in our businesses and in our government institutions. And so I do have listed here the website that gives a history of the affirmative action programs between the years of 1961 to present, and I counted no less than 30 plus incidences of legislation, appointments, and executive orders to provide people of color with equal access to education and job opportunities. And so I provided that, and you can peruse that if you would like. Hey guys, sorry to interrupt, but I got an important question for you. Do you have a special skill or talent that you need to share with the world? Maybe you're an excellent photographer, or maybe you're an excellent woodworker or crafter or cook. There are any number of things that people do every day and really enjoy and do well that they need to share with others. And so let the good people at Teachable lead you through the process of designing your own online course. It's really enjoyable, plus you can make some extra money, and I've included a link down below. Maybe your special talent is commenting on videos and blogs. And so there is a place called Paid Online Writing Jobs. And I've included a post down below where you can make money per hour reviewing and writing for others. And so this is a real cool site as well. Maybe you got that back to school blues and you're dreading going out to the stores to buy school supplies for your students. And I'm going to encourage you this year to do a lot of your shopping online. One thing, you don't have to buy from depleted store shelves. You can always pick exactly what you want and find exactly what you need. And so I'll provide a Walmart link down below where you can go and shop for your school supplies. Now, when you click on an affiliate link of mine, it won't ever cost you anything extra, but I'll get a small percentage of the sale that will help me create more content for you. So hopefully you're enjoying the podcast, and we'll get right back to it. Thanks. Okay, so the third idea in CRT is entitled Voices of People of Color. It says CRT places particular importance on the voices and experiences of people of color through insights into the operation of racism and their understanding of being racially minoritized. Okay, so I agree 100% with that. I think that that this is super important to listen to people who are in minority groups. I kind of take a little, I don't know how to say this, a little drawn back by this minoritized statement. I don't think that white people minoritize people of color. People of color are in the minority in our country right now. And we'll look at some statistics to emphasize that our population is changing and people of color are becoming more prevalent, and I think that diversity has always been good in our country. But I don't think that we minoritize people. But certainly I think listening to minorities and listening to their point of view and understanding each other is key to having a society where we can all thrive together and appreciate each other. So this goes on to say, such accounts sometimes take the form of storytelling or counter-narrative and may be semi-autobiographical or allegorical in nature. And so it's been a while since I've had freshman English, so I had to look up allegorical. Allegorical means a fictional account, or I look at it as being kind of somewhat historical fiction. As a tool, storytelling can act as a powerful means of enabling racially minoritized groups to speak back about racism and facilitate psychic preservation, a means of psychological and spiritual empowerment in response to the depleting effects of racism. And so I have no problem at all with that. I think that, like I said, understanding each other is key. You can't totally understand somebody without really listening and maybe experiencing some of the same things. As a way of explaining my background on that is that my folks come from Eastern Kentucky, and we moved to Bowling Green, which is in South Central Kentucky, when I was a very small child. And I always saw cartoons and heard people talk about hillbillies and talk in disparaging ways about people of the mountains and so forth. And I really didn't understand how that was hurtful to my parents until I spent a substantial amount of time in Eastern Kentucky, both with my grandparents and in high school and college, doing a thing called the Appalachia Service Project, where we work on homes of disadvantaged folks in Appalachia and built porches, dug outhouses, insulated, painting, and all sorts of things. And I really grew to understand the culture, the people, their challenges, their strengths. And so I think really to understand each other, you've got to live and work with people. And certainly my appreciation of people of color increased substantially when I began to teach, because I had all sorts of kids in my classroom from all sorts of backgrounds. And so I do think it's really important to get to know each other, work with each other, listen to each other. And so I think that this is a strong part of the CRT theory, even though I disagree with a lot of the other parts. All right, so let's go on. Okay, so the fourth tenet here is interest convergent. And so convergence. So they say racism serves to reinforce and advance white supremacy, helping to maintain a status quo that, while disproportionate or inequitable to racial minorities, allows whites to retain their positions of power. White people therefore have little incentive to work to eradicate racism. Okay, and then they go on to say, however, there are times when great race equality operates in the perceived interest of white people, and this notion of interest convergence helps to explain how advances can be achieved. The interest of blacks in achieving racial equality will be accommodated only when it converges with the interests of whites. Okay, and so they'll go on to say that they look at some of the advances of race relations, of racial progress, these legislative efforts, the appointments of councils, of EEOC, equal opportunities for peoples of minorities. This legislation really doesn't change anything because the underpinning of it all is white interest. In other words, people can't do something that is right because it is the correct thing to do and it benefits them. Sometimes you can't, in my thought is sometimes you just can't legislate success. And I guess in a way I agree with them that you can make all sorts of rules and regulations. You can have affirmative action programs, but a lot of times it doesn't change the hearts and minds of people. But I do think that in our country, we've made great strides in race relations. Nothing's perfect, but just seeing it as all these advances as a way of benefiting white people, I feel that that's pretty cynical, and I don't believe it. But that's their theory. All right, so the fifth tenet here is one called intersectionality. And it states, while CRT is centrally concerned with the structures and relations that maintain racial inequality, it does not operate to the exclusion of disregard of other forms of injustice. It is recognized that no person has a single, simple, unitary identity. Intersectionality, as originally advanced by Kimberly Kinshaw, speaks to an understanding of the complex and multiple ways in which various systems of subordination can come together at the same time. Adopting an intersectional framework allows for the exploration of differences within and between groups, taking account of issues such as historical and socio-political context, while still maintaining awareness of racial inequalities. Okay, so I think what this means is that there are different ways of discriminating, not just by skin color, but by other means as well, to maintain this white power structure. And related to intersectionality is the concept of differential radicalization, which is concerned with the way in which dominant social society racializes and gives focus to different minority groups at different times to suit hegemonic arguments of racial superiority and inferiority. So what this means is that you're, in the given example, of playing different racial groups against each other as a way of maintaining dominance, of stating that maybe Chinese and Indian students are superior to black students, some sort of argument in that vein. Of course, that is wrong. Everybody's an individual and shouldn't be just seen as part of a group. And I do believe that maybe sometimes that does happen. Of course, there are little nuggets of truth and sometimes an argument that is full of fallacies. But I do think that there are multiple ways of discriminating against people, but I don't believe it is the dominant underpinning of our society. And so, they feel that it is in this theory. So, they say pitting groups against each other, others' interests in analyzing the traits of successful people might be seen as being devious in some sort of way, but I think that it's certainly not what we believe in our society. I think that we celebrate success no matter where it comes from, and instead of looking for the evil that exists, and it does exist, we should look and uphold the good things in our society, the things that we work together on and are successful in uplifting the human spirit. So that is the fifth pillar here of CRT. Okay, so now let's look at some of the origins of CRT. And this is from a group called Discourses, New Discourses Commentary. Okay, so it says here, to be critical in the social justice sense is to be aware of and resist systematic power and disrupt established systems and ways of thinking. This is understood as a form of activism to end systematic oppression by criticizing all systems and undermining them. It says also subvert, deconstruct, disrupt, dismantle, and revolution. It is not the same as critical as we encounter in critical thinking. In fact, it means something more specific. So all the things above there. They want to disrupt and dismantle the systems that they feel are oppressing minorities. It goes on here to say, though its ultimate origins may be pinnable to the German philosopher Immanuel Kant, I guess, K-A-N-A-T, in his critique of pure reason, the critical approach ultimately draws in the main form of Karl Marx. Marx saw criticism of the system itself as the vital first step in remaking the world sane. I am referring to ruthless criticism of all that exists. Ruthless both in the sense of not being afraid of the results it arrives at, and in the sense of being just as little afraid of conflict with the powers that be. Therefore, criticism in the sense employed by critical theories, also called neo-Marxism, post-Marxism, Marxism, and theory, the social justice is destructive respectively. It is more interested in problematizing that is, finding ways in which, and it goes on here to say that it can be reasonable or not reasonable, and other defiable actions building something. It should not be confused with being constructive. And so in their opinion, the goal is the destruction of our democratic system, to rebuild a Marxist or socialism. They see oppressed and oppressors, they say. They want a central government that owns the means of power production. And so they say that the underpinning of critical theory is one of socialism, basically, and to destroy our ways of governing ourselves, the free market system, capitalism, and so forth. So, I think that this is a very interesting look at CRT, and one that we should be aware of as we are entering into discussions with those who may be sympathetic to this theory. Okay, since the one of the central tendencies or central thoughts of critical race theory is about the unequal distribution of wealth between white Americans and ethnic groups, I thought it might be interesting to look at some data pertaining to that. And so I found this in a Finance Buzz article, and I think they're looking at census data here. The article is entitled, U.S. net worth statistics, the state of wealth in 2022. Let's read off their summary here, or other key findings. The median net worth in the United States is $121,700, which was up 17.6% from 2016. The average net worth is $748,800, and that was up a little bit more modest, 2% from 2016. And so we find here that the median here grew more than the average. And of course, what's not stated here is the inflation rate during that time. And I believe the inflation rate was relatively low. So those gains seem to me to be pretty substantial. It says here, Black and Hispanic families had strong gains in median net worth between 2016 and 2019, 30% and 64% respectively. So the growth rate here was substantial for Black and Hispanic families. So they say, though the typical white family still has 3 to 7 times the net worth. And so I think that is disturbing, and we'll look a little bit further about maybe some of the reasons why this might have occurred. 4-year college degree holders have a median net worth more than 4 times that of someone with only a high school diploma. So that continues to be a trend. I'd be interested to see if that continues to be the case or not, because I think less and less folks are probably going to college. I don't know that for a fact, but the cost of college tuition has gotten to be where it outpaces inflation substantially. And then it says the top 10% of households own 76% of the wealth, while 50% of households only just own 1% of the wealth. And we have some extremely wealthy people in our country, and this may be a reflection of that as well. So I don't think that's surprising at all. But having said that, we have a lot of people that have a lot of wealth and a lot of power in our country. You think about the Bill Gates people like that, Warren Buffett, Bill Bezos folks. They have a substantial amount of wealth in our country. Okay, so this is some census data here, and it talks about the median income and the average income of people by education level. People that have no high school diploma had a median income of $20,780 and an average income of $137,580. All right, that's a pretty wide gap there. And one of the things that I thought of was there are some people with relatively little education that do really well in our country. The percentage of those people is probably very, very low. But those people that are very successful have high incomes, and that's probably why this average is higher than you would expect. But the median income, that's like right in the middle of all those folks, that's a better indicator of what's going on. It's $20,780. And you can see here that there is a big jump for those with a high school diploma. Those folks earn, on average, the median income for those folks is $73,890 with an average of $304,590. So I think anymore, a high school diploma is pretty well, a requirement in our society today. The percentages of people with high school diplomas is really, really high. We'll see that in some other slides as we go through the data. College, people with a college education have $89,280 as their median income. So about $20,000 more than just a high school diploma. The average income's not that much higher. It's $374,010. Okay, college degree. Here's where the big jump comes in. Folks with a college degree, the median income is 308,800, and the average is $1,516,091. And so these incomes grow substantially with the level of education that you're able to acquire. I will say that they did say that older folks tended to have more money than younger folks, and you would just expect that to be true across the board. They have more time to accumulate wealth as they go along. Okay, so here we have some interesting data about median and average net worth by family structure. And so this was really interesting to me and kind of enlightening. So first they're discussing people that are single with no child, age less than 55. So those folks probably just starting out, a lot of them. The median net worth was $15,700, and then the average net worth was $131,760. So a pretty good net worth for a wide range of people, really. People that are just starting out in the workforce, and then people who are well established. And then they talk about single, no child, greater than 55. And so if you're a single person with no kids, the median net worth is $119,500, and the median net worth, the average net worth, excuse me, is $444,900. So that was pretty interesting. Okay, so now we go single with children. Okay, and this is by far the lowest net worth. If you're single and have a child, your net worth was, the median net worth was $36,710. The average net worth was $284,620. So that shows that folks that are single with kids tend to make the lowest amount of money, I would propose. Single, a couple with no child, we used to call these dinks, double income, no kids. The average income here, or the median income here was the highest of all groups. It was $251,700. And if you have kids, or you know people that have kids, having kids is an expensive proposition, and it definitely is not economically an advantage for you, but sure is spiritually and every other way a great experience. But if you are a power couple that doesn't have kids, you certainly have an ability to have greater net worth. And then they say the average net worth, so $1,314,560. So let's look at couples with children. Couples with children, the median net worth is $166,300, and then the average net worth is $879,210. And so we see here that there is a substantial disadvantage to being single with kids. That is a tough position to be in economically. You have the burden of providing for a child and also providing for yourself without a partner. Okay, so let's take a look at education levels by race from the U.S. Census data. It says here from 2011 to 2021, the percentage of adults 25 and older who had completed high school increased for all ethnic groups. During this period, for the white non-Hispanic group, it went from 92.4 to 95.1%. For black population, it increased from 84.5 to 90.3%. For the Asian population, it went from 88.6 to 92.9%. And then for the Hispanic population, it increased from 64.3% in 2011 to 74.2% in 2021. So each group improved the number of high school graduates. And then the second section here, they talk about the percentage of folks with bachelor's degree or higher. And it said, of course, this is for people 25 and above. So for the white population, it went from 34.0% in 2011 to 41.9% in 2021. So for the black population, people with a bachelor's degree or higher went from 19.9% to 28.1%. And then for the Asian population, it went from 50.3 to 61.0%. And then for the Hispanic population, it went from 14 to 18%. So this is kind of interesting data that does not talk about trade degrees or anything like that, but it's talking about the level of college educated folks. And we could certainly work on that a bit and try to increase those numbers. One of the things that's really alarming is the rate of increase of college tuition versus the inflation rate. And college tuitions have been increasing greater than the inflation rate for years. And so this is one of the obstacles that people face, is the increasing rate of college tuition. Although here we see an increase in the numbers for each ethnic group. And so that's encouraging as well. Okay, let's look at some of the data about out-of-wedlock births. And this is from the U.S. Census data. And the first article that I came upon talked about the community survey that they did back in 2011 that said that the highest percentage of poverty seems to be related to the number of out-of-wedlock births in an area. So said research released last week by the U.S. Census Bureau American Community Survey says states with a higher percentage of out-of-wedlock births in 2011 tended to have the highest incidence of poverty. And then when we looked at the 2022 data and the median income, that lines up pretty well. Folks with the net worth of, I think it was like $36,000, tended to be single parents. And so that was the lowest net worth of all the different family structures. And let's look further at the data from 2011, and then we'll talk about 11 years later in 2022. Look at the trend here. It says nationwide, African American women reported the highest rate of out-of-wedlock births at 67.8%. American Indian or Alaskan Native women reported a 64% rate, while Hispanics reported 43% and non-Hispanic whites reported 26%. Asian Americans reported the lowest rate of out-of-wedlock births at 11.3%. Now the 2022 census, the percentage of out-of-wedlock births for non-Hispanic whites was 21.9%. So it decreased about 5% there, well, about 4%. For non-Hispanic blacks, it was 69.3%. So a slight increase there between 2011 and 2021. For Hispanics, it was 41.6%. And so it went down just a little bit, I think, here. Yeah, Hispanics reported 43% in the 2011 census, and for American Indians, 59.3%. So pretty high percentage of out-of-wedlock births for the American Indians. And of course, I don't have that data for 2011. So this percentage of out-of-wedlock births and the resulting income or the resulting net worth of folks in that category is troubling, and that's one of the reasons why you can attribute the lower income of African American folks. I wonder if you took out, if you did a statistical analysis and you took out the number of folks that were single with just one kid or single with multiple kids, if you took those folks' income out of the equation, if the net worth of the African American community would go up substantially. And I think the answer there would be yes. It'd be an interesting study to do and an interesting hypothesis. Okay, so one of the big controversies today is whether or not critical race theory is taught in our K through 12 schools. And some people say that it's just taught in higher education at the college level as a way of looking at different theories. And then other folks have stated that they know it's being taught in their schools, and they point to certain literature that is being read from. And so I thought it might be interesting to take a deep dive into that. And I came upon this article in Reason.com, and it's entitled, "Is Critical Race Theory Taught in K through 12 Schools?" The NEA, National Education Association, says yes, and that it should be. And so let's read from this article the pertinent passages here. And at its yearly annual meeting, they state, conducted virtually over the past few days, the NEA adopted new business item 39, which essentially calls for the organization to defend the teaching of critical race theory. It is reasonable and appropriate for curriculum to be informed by academic frameworks for understanding and interpreting the impact of the past on current society, including critical race theory, says the item. Consistent with its defense of CRT, the NEA will also provide a study that critiques empire, white supremacy, anti-blackness, anti-indigeneity, racism, I have a hard time with this word, patriarchy, cis heteropatriarchy, capitalism, albinism, and anthropocentrism, and other forms of power and oppression at the intersection of our society. The implication is that these critiques are aspects of critical race theory, which is a weird way makes this an example of the activist left basically accepting the activist right's new working definition of CRT as all of the various culture insanity. So they interpret this as being an agreement with the two extremes, that this is what critical racism is, or critical race theory is. I said critical racism. I guess that's a Freudian slip. And so this article was by Bobby Soave, S-O-A-V-E, and it was written in July 6, 2021 at 1 p.m. And he had an update that shortly after his story was published, that this passage was taken out of the NEA's website. So he said he provided a link of the older version so that you could read it. And so this brings up a kind of an interesting point of view that those in power in the NEA would have liked to have defended CRT, but there was such an uproar about it being taught in the schools that they no longer at least published that they are for this type of approach to teaching children about race and racism. And so I think that that is worth noting. And certainly there have been places throughout the country where parents have united against some of the texts and curriculum being presented to our kids. So some literature to watch out for in your kids' textbooks and the things that they are studying. I got this from christianpost.com. It says, watch out for the CRT books being taught in schools. It says, Woke Baby is one of them. Not My Idea. Not to be how to be an anarchist. And then another children's book, it says, Something Happened to Our Town, a child's story about racial injustice. So those are some books that they believe push this idea of critical race theory. I think there are some more on the next slide. More books. Stamped Racism, Anarchism, and You is another book that they said to look for. I think, this is not meant to be an all-inclusive list of books. I think that parents and stakeholders that are concerned about these issues should really look at each textbook and read some of the pertinent passages in those texts. Know what your kids reading at school. I think that's really super important. I think that especially since I think that one of the previous podcasts I said about 60% of the population of teachers in the school are Democrats. It just goes to reason that maybe some of this is creeping in to our curriculum. I don't believe it is nationwide. I do believe that there are pockets of our country where this is being pushed, but the creep might be creeping into your school, and I think it's important that you're aware of what's going on. I think maybe the only good thing about the pandemic was that people are taking a harder look at what's being taught in our schools, and I think that that's a good thing. I think to have an intelligent conversation about these ideas, knowing what the ideas are and why you find them objectionable, is important. And so I think that these things are things that we should be paying attention to. Okay, so I have another important piece of information for you. There is a website. It's called Critical Race Training in Education, and this is a great place for parents to look. And it is a research accumulation by a Cornell Law professor, and he's launched this website about critical race theory and curriculum in the United States in hopes of educating concerned parents about how the controversial movement impacts education. And so I went there, and it has a big map of the United States, and you can click on your particular state and see what's being taught and the view of critical practitioners in the area of education. And so I think that this is a great resource. Well, I hope you found this interesting, and I hope that I've approached it in a way that is fair to all concerned. If I wasn't fair, or if I misrepresented something, I'll be looking forward to your comments. Please be respectful. I try to be in all my dealings. And so without further ado, I will say that I care about everybody. I wish the best for everybody involved. And I certainly hope that this discussion helps move the conversation toward civil discourse about race and racism in our country.